A dog appears out of nowhere, blocks a police patrol car and begs for help. But when the officers decide to follow him, what they discover leaves them speechless. A shocking revelation that uncovers far more than they ever imagined. The summer heat wrapped around Asheville's rural outskirts like a heavy blanket, as officers James Carter and Sarah Mitchell cruised down an almost deserted country road in their patrol car. The morning sun cast long shadows across the weathered asphalt, while the surrounding mountains stood as silent sentinels against the clear blue sky. The routine patrol had settled into a comfortable silence between the two officers, broken only by the occasional crackle of the radio and the hum of the air conditioning. If this story caught your interest, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Tell us which city you're watching from. Let's keep going. Sarah absently drummed her fingers against the steering wheel, her mind wandering to the stack of unsolved cases waiting on her desk back at the station. James, her partner of 3 years, was reviewing reports on his tablet, his forehead creased in concentration. The monotony of their morning patrol was about to be shattered in a way neither could have anticipated. As they rounded a gentle curve, Sarah's foot instinctively moved to the brake pedal. In the middle of the road, barely 20 yards ahead, stood a golden retriever. The dog's presence alone wasn't particularly unusual in these rural parts, but something about its posture made both officers sit up straighter. The animal stood perfectly still, its intelligent eyes fixed on their approaching vehicle with an intensity that seemed almost human. "That's different," James muttered, setting aside his tablet as Sarah brought the patrol car to a complete stop. The dog didn't flee or bark. Instead, it maintained its position, its amber eyes locked with Sarah's through the windshield. There was something in those eyes, an urgency, a desperation that transcended the usual animal-human barrier. The dog's coat, though golden, was dusty and slightly matted, suggesting it had been traveling through rough terrain. "Something's not right," Sarah said, her hand already reaching for the door handle. Years of police work had taught her to trust her instincts, and right now every one of them was telling her this was more than a simple case of a stray animal. As both officers stepped out of the vehicle, the dog's behavior shifted. It took several steps toward them, then turned to look back over its shoulder at a narrow dirt path leading into the dense vegetation beside the road. The animal repeated this motion, moving a few steps forward, then looking back at them, its intent becoming increasingly clear. "It wants us to follow," James said, voicing what they were both thinking. The dog's deliberate movements were too purposeful to be random, too insistent to ignore. Sarah radioed their position to dispatch, explaining they were investigating a potential situation off-road. She couldn't quite articulate what kind of situation they were walking into, but years of experience had taught her that sometimes the most significant cases started with the smallest anomalies. The dog, sensing their willingness to follow, led them down the dirt path. The undergrowth was thick, branches catching at their uniforms as they pushed through. The air grew heavier under the canopy of trees, the morning heat intensifying in the enclosed space. After several minutes of careful progress, they emerged into a small clearing. Here, the dog's behavior changed dramatically. It began digging frantically at a specific spot in the ground, throwing up clouds of dust and dirt with its paws. Sarah and James exchanged glances before approaching cautiously. As they drew closer, they could see something partially buried in the disturbed earth, the corner of a wooden box protruding from the ground. Working together, they carefully excavated the area around the box. What they found inside made their hearts sink. 4 puppies, severely dehydrated and weak, huddled together in the confined space. The golden retriever, clearly their mother, whined softly, nudging at her pups with her nose. The discovery marked the beginning of something much larger than a simple rescue. As Sarah gently lifted the first puppy from the box, she caught James's eye. They had both seen enough in their careers to know that this situation wasn't random. The careful burial of the box, the isolated location, the mother dog's desperate plea for help, it all pointed to something more sinister at work in their quiet mountain community. The veterinary clinic buzzed with quiet urgency as Dr. Carter examined the 4 puppies. The mother dog, whom Sarah had started calling Gold, refused to leave her puppy's side, her watchful eyes following every movement the veterinarian made. The examination room was filled with the gentle whirring of medical equipment and the soft whimpers of the weakened puppies. "They're severely dehydrated, Doctor," Carter announced, his experienced hands gently checking each puppy's vital signs. "But with proper care, they should make a full recovery." He glanced at Gold, who sat alertly beside the examination table. "Their mother's incredible. She must have been searching for help for quite some time." Sarah watched as Dr. Carter administered fluids to the puppies, her mind racing with questions. The way the box had been buried, the remote location, the careful planning it would have taken to transport and conceal them, none of it suggested a simple case of abandonment. There was something more methodical, more organized about the whole situation. "Have you seen any similar cases recently, Doctor?" "Carter," she asked, her investigator's instincts kicking in. "Any other animals brought in under unusual circumstances?" The veterinarian's hesitation was brief but noticeable. "Now that you mention it, there have been a few cases over the past months. Nothing exactly like this, but—" He trailed off, moving to retrieve some records from his computer. "About 3 weeks ago, we had 2 separate instances of puppies being brought in, found in remote areas. Both times, they showed signs of being kept in confined spaces." James, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. "Would you be willing to share those records with us? We need to establish if there's a pattern here." While Dr. Carter compiled the information, Sarah knelt beside Gold, who momentarily turned her attention from her puppies to lock eyes with the officer. There was an intelligence in those amber eyes that Sarah had rarely seen in animals. Gold had not only managed to escape whoever had buried her puppies, but had also found help and led them directly to the site. This was no ordinary dog. "You know something, don't you, girl?" Sarah whispered, gently stroking Gold's head. The dog's ears perked up at her words, and for a moment, Sarah could have sworn there was a flash of understanding in those expressive eyes. The following morning, Sarah and James returned to the clearing where they'd found the puppies. The summer heat was already intense, making the air thick and heavy as they carefully examined the area. The disturbed earth where the box had been buried told only part of the story. Sarah's trained eye caught other details: the partial tire tracks leading away from the scene, the broken branches that suggested a vehicle had backed into the clearing, and most importantly, a piece of fabric caught on a low-hanging branch. "Look at this," Sarah called to James, carefully removing the fabric with gloved hands. It appeared to be a piece of industrial uniform, the kind worn by warehouse workers or shipping company employees. The material was sturdy, designed for heavy work, and had a distinctive blue-gray color that might help identify its source. James photographed the scene while Sarah bagged the evidence. The clearing felt different in the daylight, less ominous but more revealing. Every broken twig, every disturbed patch of earth told a story of what had happened here. The track suggested a larger vehicle, possibly a van or small truck, had accessed the clearing recently. Back at the station, Sarah spread out a map of the area on her desk. The clearing where they'd found Gold and her puppies wasn't easily accessible. Someone would have needed to know it was there. As she marked the location, something caught her eye. There were several similar remote areas within a 10-mile radius, all accessible by narrow dirt roads but hidden from main thoroughfares. "James," she called, "take a look at this." She pointed to the pattern emerging on the map. All these locations share similar characteristics: isolated, hard to find, unless you know where you're looking, but still accessible by vehicle. James leaned over the map, his expression thoughtful. "Perfect spots if you're trying to keep something hidden," he observed. "We should cross-reference these locations with Dr. Carter's records of similar cases." As they worked, Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Carter. The initial test results from Gold's puppies had come back, revealing something unexpected. The puppies showed traces of sedatives in their system. Not enough to be lethal, but sufficient to keep them quiet during transport. This wasn't just a case of abandonment. It was something far more calculated. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the precinct windows as Sarah reviewed the growing pile of evidence on her desk. The piece of industrial uniform fabric had been sent to the forensics lab, and she was anxiously awaiting the results. Meanwhile, she and James had been mapping out every similar incident reported in the area over the past 6 months, creating a complex web of locations and dates that seemed to suggest a disturbing pattern. At the veterinary clinic, Gold had become something of a celebrity. Her story of maternal devotion and intelligence had spread among the staff, and even other patients and their owners were drawn to her calm, dignified presence. Dr. Carter had noted that despite her own ordeal, Gold showed remarkable patience and gentleness with everyone she encountered, especially children who visited the clinic. "She's quite extraordinary, Doctor," Carter remarked to Sarah during one of her follow-up visits. "I've been thinking, once this case is resolved, Gold might make an excellent therapy dog. She has the perfect temperament for it." Sarah watched as Gold interacted with a young girl who was nervous about her cat's checkup. The dog's gentle presence seemed to calm the child instantly, and Sarah couldn't help but smile. "She does have a way about her, doesn't she?" The peaceful scene was interrupted by an urgent call from the forensics lab. The fabric analysis had revealed something interesting: traces of industrial-grade cleaning solutions and a specific type of dirt consistent with warehouse environments. More importantly, the material matched uniforms used by several large shipping companies in the region. Back at her desk, Sarah was cross-referencing warehouse locations with their map of incidents when her computer pinged with a new email. It was anonymous, sent through a temporary account, but its contents made her breath catch. "Another shipment. Tomorrow night." "Don't let them silence these voices too." James leaned over her shoulder reading the message. "Could be a trap," he warned, but Sarah was already reaching for her jacket. "Or it could be our chance to stop this," she countered. "We need to check it out, but we'll be careful." They decided to bring Gold along on their reconnaissance mission. The dog had proven herself not just intelligent, but also incredibly perceptive. As they approached the location indicated in the anonymous tip, Gold's behavior changed noticeably. Her ears perked forward, and her body tensed with alertness. The warehouse was tucked away in an industrial park on the outskirts of town, surrounded by dense trees that provided natural cover. From their observation point, Sarah and James could see several large delivery trucks parked in the loading area. Everything looked normal on the surface, but Gold's increasing agitation suggested otherwise. Using their patrol car's computer, Sarah pulled up property records for the warehouse. It had changed hands several times in the past year, with the current owner listed as a shell company. James was making calls to neighboring businesses, building a picture of the warehouse's daily operations. "Something's off," he whispered, ending his last call. "According to the businesses next door, there's regular activity here at night, but during the day it's practically deserted. That's the opposite of normal warehouse operations." As if to confirm their suspicions, a large truck pulled into the loading area, its headlights cutting through the growing dusk. Gold let out a low growl, her eyes fixed on the vehicle. The driver stepped out, followed by two other men who began unloading what appeared to be ordinary shipping crates. Sarah's trained eye caught details that seemed out of place. The way the men constantly scanned their surroundings, the unusual care they took with supposedly ordinary cargo, the fact that they worked in near-complete silence. Everything about the scene spoke of people trying very hard to appear normal while doing something that was anything but. Suddenly, Gold's head snapped toward a different direction, her body tense with alertness. Sarah followed the dog's gaze and noticed a second vehicle approaching from a back road, one that wouldn't be visible from the main street. The new arrival kicked up dust as it made its way toward the warehouse's rear entrance, its headlights off, despite the growing darkness. James was already documenting everything with the patrol car's long-range camera, while Sarah noted down license plates and descriptions. But it was Gold's reaction that truly confirmed their suspicions. The dog's behavior mirrored how she'd acted in the clearing where they'd found her puppies, suggesting a connection between these people and what had happened to her family. The warehouse loomed before them, its weathered walls holding secrets that were about to be unveiled. Sarah, James, and Gold approached cautiously, their movements concealed by the pre-dawn shadows. The anonymous tip had proven accurate. There was definitely something suspicious happening within these walls. As they drew closer, Gold's behavior became increasingly alert, her muscles tense with recognition. The morning air was thick with anticipation as they positioned themselves near a side entrance. The sound of machinery humming inside provided cover for their approach. Sarah's heart pounded as she recalled the careful planning that had led to this moment. After days of surveillance and gathering evidence, they had finally obtained the necessary authorization to investigate the premises. Inside, the warehouse was a maze of metal shelving and stacked crates. The air was heavy with the smell of industrial cleaners, the same compounds found on the fabric sample from the clearing. Gold moved with purpose, leading them deeper into the facility, her nose working overtime as she tracked a scent that only she could detect. The first sign that something was amiss came from a section hidden behind tall storage units. The sound of whimpering carried faintly through the air, barely audible over the mechanical drone of ventilation systems. Gold's pace quickened, her tail straight and alert as she led them toward the source of the sound. What they found made Sarah's blood run cold. Dozens of cages lined the walls of a hidden room, each containing puppies in various states of distress. The setup was sophisticated. Ventilation systems had been installed to keep the noise from carrying, and detailed records were kept on clipboards hanging from each cage. "Look at this," James whispered, examining one of the clipboards. "They're keeping track of ages, breeds, even temperaments. This is organized." Gold moved from cage to cage, her demeanor a mixture of concern and determination. She stopped at one particular cage, pawing gently at the door. Inside, several puppies that looked remarkably similar to her own were huddled together. Sarah felt her heart constrict. These could easily be from the same group that Gold had been separated from. The sound of a door opening somewhere in the warehouse froze them in place. Gold's ears perked up, and she turned toward the noise, her body language shifting from concern to alert protectiveness. Sarah and James quickly positioned themselves behind some crates, watching as two men entered the room. "The shipment from Charlotte needs to go out today," one man was saying, consulting a tablet. "The buyers are getting impatient." "What about the new batch?" the other asked, moving toward the cages. "That golden retriever we lost was supposed to be part of a premium shipment. The boss is still furious about that one." Sarah felt her hand tighten on her radio. They finally had confirmation. These were the people responsible for what had happened to Gold and her puppies. The operation was larger than they'd imagined, with connections to other cities and a network of buyers. Gold remained perfectly still, her training from the past few weeks evident in her controlled behavior. Dr. Carter had been working with her, helping to channel her natural intelligence and protective instincts into disciplined responses. Now that training was paying off as she waited for signals from Sarah and James. The next few moments unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. As the men moved deeper into the room, Sarah and James emerged from their hiding spot. The suspects, caught completely off guard, made a break for the exit, but Gold was faster. With practiced precision, she blocked their path, her presence both commanding and controlled. One of the men reached for something in his jacket, but James was already there, securing his arms while Sarah dealt with the other suspect. Gold maintained her position, ensuring no one could flee through the exit. The entire takedown was executed without a single shot fired or any harm coming to the animals. As backup units arrived and the scale of the operation became clear, Sarah knelt beside Gold, scratching behind her ears. "You did good, girl," she whispered. The dog's tail wagged once, her eyes still focused on the suspects being led away in handcuffs. The evidence they discovered in the warehouse was damning. Beyond the cages and records, they found detailed shipping manifests, customer lists, and financial documents. But even as they processed the scene, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the tip of the iceberg. The operation seemed too well organized, too sophisticated to be limited to just this one location. Back at the veterinary clinic, Dr. Carter worked tirelessly to assess and treat the rescued puppies. The warehouse discovery had turned his small clinic into an impromptu emergency center, with staff working overtime to care for the numerous animals. Gold moved from puppy to puppy, offering comfort and seemingly understanding exactly which ones needed the most attention. "She's remarkable," Dr. Carter observed, watching as Gold gently nuzzled a particularly frightened puppy until it began to wag its tail. "I've never seen anything quite like her, the way she knows exactly what each puppy needs. It's almost like she's been trained for this." Sarah, who had stopped by to check on the rescued animals, watched the scene with growing interest. Could she have been a therapy dog before? She wondered aloud. Her behavior seems too refined to be purely instinctual. Dr. Carter nodded thoughtfully. It's possible. Her interactions with both animals and humans show signs of previous training. But if that's the case... He trailed off, his expression troubled. Then someone invested time and resources in training her, Sarah finished his thought, which makes her ending up in that box even more suspicious. The investigation had revealed that the warehouse operation was part of a larger network with connections to several states. The documents they'd recovered painted a picture of a sophisticated operation that had been running for months, possibly years, but there were still missing pieces to the puzzle. Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from James. He had been analyzing the financial records recovered from the warehouse and had found something interesting. She headed back to the station, leaving Gold to continue her work with the rescued puppies. At the precinct, James had spread dozens of documents across his desk. "Look at this," he said as soon as Sarah arrived, pointing to a series of transactions. "These payments aren't just for the puppies. There are larger sums going to something called Special Training Division." Sarah leaned over the documents, her eyes narrowing as she studied the numbers. "These amounts are too high for basic obedience training. What kind of training costs this much?" They spent hours going through the records, piecing together a pattern that suggested something more complex than they'd initially suspected. The operation wasn't just collecting and selling puppies. They were identifying dogs with specific traits and abilities, particularly those showing high intelligence and emotional sensitivity. "Like Gold," Sarah murmured, the pieces starting to fit together. "They're looking for dogs that could be trained for specialized work. But why bury them? Why try to hide them?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Carter called later that evening, his voice excited. "Sarah, you need to see this. I've been going through Gold's medical examination results more thoroughly, and there's something unusual in her blood work." At the clinic, Dr. Carter showed them the test results. "See these markers? They're consistent with exposure to experimental training compounds, substances used to enhance learning and memory in animals. It's cutting-edge stuff, typically only used in research facilities." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "So they're not just training these dogs, they're experimenting on them." "Not exactly," Dr. Carter corrected. "These compounds are legal, but they're extremely expensive and carefully regulated. They're typically used in developing service dogs for specialized roles. Therapy dogs, search and rescue, that sort of thing. The interesting part is that only a handful of facilities are authorized to use them." Back at the station, this new information led them down another rabbit hole. Sarah and James began investigating authorized training facilities in the region, cross-referencing them with the financial records from the warehouse. As they worked, another anonymous message arrived. "Check the rural property off Route 27. What you found is just the beginning." Sarah stared at the message, her mind racing. The warehouse bust had felt like a victory, but now it seemed they'd only scratched the surface. The operation wasn't just about selling puppies, it was about identifying and exploiting extraordinary animals like Gold, dogs with special abilities that made them valuable in ways they were only beginning to understand. As if sensing her thoughts, Gold, who had accompanied them back to the station, placed her head on Sarah's lap. Her intelligent eyes seemed to say she was ready for whatever came next. Sarah scratched behind her ears, marveling at how this remarkable dog had not only saved her own puppies, but had helped uncover something much larger. The rural property off Route 27 stood isolated among rolling hills and dense forest, its weathered buildings barely visible from the main road. Sarah and James had spent days conducting surveillance, noting the irregular pattern of vehicles coming and going. Gold sat in the back of their unmarked car, her attention fixed on the distant buildings, with an intensity that confirmed their suspicions. "Look at the setup," James commented, studying the property through binoculars. Security cameras disguised as wildlife cameras, motion sensors hidden in what looked like birdhouses. "Someone's gone to a lot of trouble to make this place appear abandoned while keeping it heavily monitored." Sarah nodded, reviewing the satellite images they'd obtained. The property included several outbuildings, all strategically placed to be invisible from public roads. What appeared to be a simple farm from a distance was revealing itself to be something far more sophisticated. "The interesting thing," Sarah said, pointing to her tablet, "is that this property is officially registered as a private animal sanctuary. They even have all the proper permits and licenses. It's the perfect cover." Gold's sudden alertness drew their attention to a vehicle approaching the property, an unmarked white van similar to those they'd seen at the warehouse. The dog's reaction was unmistakable. Her body tensed, and a low whimper escaped her throat. Using their long-range camera, they documented as men in work uniforms unloaded what appeared to be standard animal transport crates. However, the careful way they handled the crates and their constant surveillance of their surroundings suggested something more clandestine. Back at the station, Sarah and James compiled their observations with the growing mountain of evidence. The connection between the warehouse and this property was becoming clearer. Both facilities were part of a larger operation that specialized in identifying and exploiting exceptional animals. Dr. Carter had made another breakthrough in his analysis of Gold's blood work. These training compounds, he explained during their daily briefing, they're not just enhancing learning ability, they're specifically designed to amplify natural empathetic abilities in dogs. It's the kind of training typically reserved for advanced therapy dogs or search and rescue animals. Sarah watched as Gold interacted with a group of children visiting the station. The dog's gentle demeanor and intuitive understanding of each child's emotional state was remarkable. She seemed to know exactly which children needed quiet comfort and which ones needed playful engagement. She's not just well-trained, Sarah realized. She's gifted. And somehow they knew that before they started training her. The implications were staggering. The operation wasn't randomly collecting and selling puppies. They had developed a method for identifying dogs with extraordinary potential. The financial records from the warehouse showed massive payments from private security firms, specialized training facilities, and even some government contractors. James arrived with new information from their background checks. The property owner, the shell company that owns the warehouse, and 3 other similar facilities in neighboring states, they're all connected to a single investment group. But here's where it gets interesting. This group specializes in developing advanced training methodologies for service animals. Sarah's computer pinged with another anonymous message. The training facility isn't just about dogs. Check the rehabilitation program records. Not all sanctuaries are what they seem. As they dug deeper into the property's records, they discovered that the animal sanctuary had been running a youth rehabilitation program, supposedly offering animal-assisted therapy to troubled teens. But something about the program's records seemed off. Inconsistent documentation, vague progress reports, and an unusual number of participants who seemed to disappear from the system entirely. Gold, who had been dozing near Sarah's desk, suddenly lifted her head and stared intently at the door. Moments later, Dr. Carter walked in carrying a thick folder of medical records. "You need to see this," he said, spreading the documents across Sarah's desk. "I've been comparing Gold's test results with standard protocols for service dog training. These aren't just enhancement compounds. They're part of an experimental program that was supposedly discontinued years ago. Someone's not only continuing the research, they're expanding it." Sarah looked at Gold, who met her gaze with those intelligent, knowing eyes. The dog wasn't just a victim of this operation. She was living proof of what they were trying to achieve. Her escape and subsequent rescue of her puppies hadn't just exposed a network of illegal animal trafficking. It had uncovered something far more complex and concerning. Early morning mist clung to the ground as Sarah, James, and a tactical team approached the rural property. After days of careful planning and surveillance, they were finally ready to investigate the supposed sanctuary. Gold padded silently beside Sarah, her presence both reassuring and purposeful. The dog's training had progressed remarkably over the past weeks, making her an invaluable part of the operation. The property sprawled across several acres, its buildings strategically placed to appear random, while maintaining clear sightlines in all directions. As they moved closer, Gold's behavior shifted subtly, her ears forward, her steps measured and deliberate. She was tracking something specific, leading them toward one of the smaller outbuildings rather than the main facility. "Look at this," James whispered, pointing to what appeared to be fresh tire tracks leading behind the building. The tracks didn't match any of the vehicles they'd observed during their surveillance, suggesting recent unauthorized activity. Inside the outbuilding, they found sophisticated training equipment carefully concealed behind panels designed to look like ordinary farm storage. The setup was impressive: climate-controlled rooms, monitoring systems, and what appeared to be specialized training areas. "This is way beyond standard service dog training," Sarah observed, examining the equipment. These systems are meant to measure and record behavioral responses at a level I've never seen before. Gold moved purposefully through the facility, her nose working overtime as she tracked various scents. She led them to a locked door, pawing at it insistently. When they managed to open it, they discovered a room filled with computer servers and filing cabinets. "They've been collecting data," James said, scanning through the files. "Detailed behavioral assessments, genetic markers, response patterns. They're not just training these dogs, they're studying them." The documents revealed a systematic approach to identifying and developing what they called exceptional candidates, dogs that showed unusual levels of intelligence, empathy, and adaptability. Gold's name appeared in several files, her assessments marking her as one of their most promising subjects. As they continued their search, they found something unexpected, a separate wing of the facility that hadn't appeared in any of their satellite imagery. The wing was carefully concealed, its entrance hidden behind what appeared to be a standard storage area. Gold's reaction to this discovery was immediate and intense. She began pawing at the hidden entrance, her behavior showing a mixture of agitation and determination. When they managed to access the concealed wing, they understood why. The space was set up as an advanced training center, but with a disturbing twist. The equipment and setup suggested they were pushing the animals far beyond normal training protocols, using methods that prioritized results over welfare. Records scattered throughout the area hinted at experiments designed to enhance natural abilities through a combination of chemical compounds and intensive conditioning. Sarah felt her heart sink as she read through the documentation. They were using the rehabilitation program as cover, she realized. The Troubled Teens program gave them access to a steady stream of volunteers and minimized outside scrutiny. James was examining a computer terminal when he called Sarah over. "Look at this. They've been tracking all their graduates. Dogs like Gold weren't just being trained, they were being prepared for specific buyers, private security firms, specialized research facilities, even some government contractors." Gold suddenly tensed, her attention fixed on a distant sound. Moments later, they heard vehicles approaching. Through the windows, they could see several unmarked vans pulling up to the main building. Men in uniforms began unloading equipment, their movements suggesting they were preparing for a major operation. "They're not shutting down," Sarah whispered, watching the activity. "They're expanding." As if to confirm her suspicions, Gold led them to another area where they found blueprints for additional facilities. The plans showed similar setups planned for multiple locations across several states, each designed to appear as innocent animal sanctuaries or rehabilitation centers. The scale of the operation was staggering. This wasn't just about training exceptional dogs. It was about developing a systematic way to identify, enhance, and exploit natural abilities that most people didn't even know existed. Gold wasn't just a successful experiment. She was proof of what their program could achieve. The discovery at the sanctuary had opened up more questions than answers. Back at the precinct, Sarah and James worked late into the night, sorting through the mountain of evidence they'd gathered. The walls of their office were covered with photos, documents, and connecting threads that painted a picture of an operation far more extensive than they'd initially imagined. "Look at these training protocols," Sarah said, spreading out a series of documents across her desk. "They're not just enhancing natural abilities, they're trying to create something entirely new. The combination of genetic screening, behavioral conditioning, and these experimental compounds, it's like they're trying to push the boundaries of what's possible." Gold lay nearby, her head resting on her paws but her eyes alert and following their movements. Since the raid on the sanctuary, she'd become even more protective of Sarah and James, as if sensing the magnitude of what they were uncovering. Dr. Carter arrived with fresh analysis of the medical records they'd recovered. "These aren't just random experiments," he explained, pointing to various charts and diagrams. "They've developed a systematic approach to identifying dogs with specific genetic markers, markers that indicate potential for enhanced empathy, intelligence, and what they're calling intuitive response patterns." The veterinarian's expression was troubled as he continued, "But what's most concerning is the scale of their success. Gold isn't an anomaly. She's proof that their methods work. They've found a way to identify and enhance natural abilities that we barely understand." A knock at the door interrupted their discussion. One of the forensic analysts entered, carrying a laptop. "You need to see this," she said, setting up the computer. "We've been analyzing the data from the sanctuary's servers. They've been keeping detailed records of every animal that's gone through their program, including what they call placement outcomes." The database revealed a complex network of buyers and facilities spread across multiple states. Each entry included detailed assessments of the animal's abilities, training progress, and intended placement. Some were designated for private security firms, others for specialized research facilities, and a few for what were simply labeled as advanced applications. "There's something else," the analyst continued, pulling up another file. "And we found communications about something called Project Echo. It seems to be their next phase, something about expanding the program beyond current limitations." Sarah felt Gold press against her leg, the dog's presence both comforting and somehow knowing. The rehabilitation program, she mused, it wasn't just a cover. They were using it to refine their methods, studying how the animals interacted with different types of people under various conditions. James, who had been quiet for a while, suddenly straightened up. "Sarah, look at these dates," he said, pointing to a series of entries. "The timeline of when they started expanding their operations matches perfectly with when they began the youth program. They weren't just studying the dogs, they were studying the interaction between the animals and the teenagers. The implications were staggering. The organization hadn't just developed a way to enhance animals' natural abilities. They'd created a comprehensive program to study and exploit the unique bond between humans and animals. The rehabilitation program had provided them with the perfect laboratory, troubled teens whose interactions with the animals wouldn't be questioned too closely. Doctor Carter was examining Gold's original medical records again. "These training compounds," he said slowly, "they're not just about enhancing learning ability, they're designed to strengthen the emotional connection between the animal and specific individuals. It's like they're trying to create perfect partnerships." Gold's ears suddenly perked up, and she moved to the window, her posture alert. Outside, a car they didn't recognize had pulled into the parking lot. The driver remained inside, engine running, watching the building. "They're monitoring us," Sarah realized. "They know we're getting close to something." As if in response to her words, her computer pinged with another anonymous message. "Project Echo isn't about training animals. It's about what happens when you find the right partnership. Some bonds can't be broken or controlled." Sarah looked at Gold, remembering how the dog had not only escaped, but had found help and led them back to her puppies. She hadn't just demonstrated exceptional intelligence. She'd shown an ability to connect with humans in a way that transcended normal animal behavior. "That's why they buried the puppies," James said quietly, the pieces finally falling into place. Gold wasn't just another test subject. She was proof that their program worked, maybe too well. She developed abilities they couldn't control. The veterinary clinic had become their unofficial headquarters as Dr. Carter continued to work with the rescued animals. Gold had taken on an almost maternal role with all of them, showing particular attention to those who seemed most traumatized. Her ability to calm and comfort the other dogs was remarkable, drawing amazed observations from the clinic staff. "Watch this," Dr. Carter said one morning, gesturing toward Gold as she approached a particularly frightened puppy. The dog's technique was fascinating. She would lay down at a distance, making herself appear smaller and non-threatening, then gradually inch closer as the puppy's anxiety decreased. Within minutes, the formerly terrified animal would be cautiously wagging its tail. "It's not just instinct," Sarah observed, taking notes. "She's reading their emotional states and adapting her approach accordingly. This is exactly the kind of enhanced empathy capability their program was trying to develop." James arrived with fresh information from their investigation. "The sanctuary wasn't their only facility," he reported, spreading out a series of satellite photos. "We've identified 3 more locations with similar setups, all registered under different shell companies, but connected to the same investment group." Dr. Carter, who had been reviewing more of Gold's medical records, called them over to his computer. "Look at this pattern in her blood work," he said, pointing to a series of markers. "These compounds aren't just about enhancing cognitive abilities. They're designed to strengthen specific neural pathways, the ones associated with emotional bonding and intuitive response." Sarah watched as Gold moved among the other rescued animals, her behavior showing a level of understanding that seemed almost human. The dog wasn't just helping them recover physically, she was helping them overcome their emotional trauma. They were trying to create the perfect therapy animal, Sarah realized, but they got more than they bargained for. Gold didn't just develop enhanced abilities, she developed independence, the ability to make her own choices. A young volunteer entered the clinic, carrying supplies for the recovered puppies. Gold's reaction was immediate and surprising. She positioned herself between the volunteer and the other animals, her posture alert but not aggressive. Something about the newcomer had triggered her protective instincts. Sarah noticed the volunteer's uniform. It was from the same company that supplied the sanctuary's maintenance staff. A quick background check revealed that the volunteer program had connections to several of the shell companies they'd been investigating. "They're not just monitoring us," James said quietly. "They're trying to maintain access to the animals. They don't want to lose track of their test subjects." Dr. Carter had made another discovery in the medical records. "These training protocols," he explained, "they're designed to create what they call adaptive bonds. The dogs aren't just trained to respond to commands, they're developed to form deep, intuitive connections with specific individuals." Sarah thought about how Gold had found her that day on the rural road, how the dog had somehow known she could trust her. It wasn't just chance. Gold had been able to read and understand human intentions in a way that went beyond normal animal behavior. The volunteer left, but the incident had revealed something important. The organization wasn't just interested in creating enhanced animals, they were studying the complex dynamics of human-animal bonds, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Later that afternoon, while reviewing security footage from the clinic, they noticed something odd. The volunteer had been taking photos of the clinic's layout and security measures, paying particular attention to the areas where the rescued animals were kept. "They're planning something," Sarah said, studying the footage. "They're not going to just let these animals go. There's too much invested in them." Gold approached Sarah's desk, carrying something in her mouth, a piece of paper that had fallen from the volunteer's pocket. It was a partial document, but what they could read was concerning. Instructions for moving assets to a new facility, with specific mentions of maintaining environmental control and behavioral consistency. The implications were clear. The organization was planning to reclaim their test subjects, but they hadn't counted on Gold's enhanced abilities being used against them. The very capabilities they had worked to develop were now being used to protect the other animals and expose their operations. The evening cast long shadows through the veterinary clinic's windows as Sarah, James, and Dr. Carter reviewed their security measures. The discovery of the volunteers' true purpose had put everyone on high alert. Gold lay near the entrance, her vigilant presence a comfort to both the staff and the other animals. "The security cameras are all operational," James reported, checking the newly installed system. "We've got coverage of every entrance and the surrounding parking lot." The precinct had authorized additional protective measures for the clinic, recognizing the potential threat to the rescued animals. Dr. Carter was organizing medical records when something caught his attention. "Look at this," he said, pulling up a series of test results. "The compounds they were using, they're not just about enhancing abilities. They're creating what appears to be a kind of synchronized response pattern between certain dogs." Sarah leaned in to examine the data. "What do you mean by synchronized?" "It's like they're developing a collective awareness," the veterinarian explained. "We've noticed it with the rescued dogs. They respond to threats as a coordinated group, with Gold somehow acting as a focal point. It's far beyond normal pack behavior." As if to demonstrate his point, Gold suddenly stood up, her attention fixed on something outside. Moments later, the other dogs in the clinic became alert as well, all responding to something that humans couldn't yet perceive. Through the security cameras, they watched as an unmarked van slowly circled the parking lot. The driver was taking photos with a long-lens camera, documenting the clinic's layout and security measures. "They're getting bolder," James observed, noting down the van's details. "They're not even trying to hide their surveillance anymore." Sarah's phone buzzed with another anonymous message. Project Echo was never about individual enhancement. It was about creating networks, connections that can't be controlled or contained. The puppies were just the beginning. The message was followed by a series of coordinates, and what appeared to be access codes. When they entered the coordinates into their mapping system, they found another facility, this one hidden in an industrial complex on the outskirts of town. Gold's behavior had become increasingly protective of certain areas in the clinic, particularly where they kept the medical records and test results. She seemed to understand the importance of what those documents contained. "She's not just guarding the other dogs," Dr. Carter noted. "She's guarding information. Somehow she knows what's at stake." A detailed review of the sanctuary's records revealed something they had missed before. The rehabilitation program hadn't just been about troubled teens working with dogs. It had been a study in building emotional networks, creating webs of connection between humans and enhanced animals. "Look at these assessment criteria," Sarah said, spreading out the documents. They were measuring something they called resonance patterns, the ability of certain dogs to form simultaneous connections with multiple individuals while maintaining their independence. James, who had been analyzing surveillance footage from the sanctuary, made another discovery. The teens in the program, they weren't just working with the dogs. They were part of the experiment. The organization was studying how enhanced animals could influence human emotional states and decision-making. Gold approached Sarah's desk, carrying her leash, a clear signal that she wanted to investigate something. The dog's intuition had proven invaluable throughout the case, and they had learned to trust her instincts. Following Gold's lead, they drove to a location near the industrial complex mentioned in the anonymous message. The dog's behavior changed as they approached, not anxious or aggressive, but intensely focused, as if she recognized something important. From their observation point, they could see unusual activity around one of the warehouses. Workers were installing what appeared to be specialized ventilation systems and security measures, similar to what they'd found at the sanctuary. "They're setting up another facility," Sarah realized. "They're not shutting down, they're adapting, evolving their operation." Gold's attention was fixed on a specific loading dock, where workers were unloading large crates with air holes. The dog's body language suggested these weren't ordinary animal transport containers. There was something different about them, something that concerned her. The industrial complex loomed before them in the pre-dawn light, its warehouses casting long shadows across the empty parking lots. Sarah, James, and their tactical team maintained surveillance from a safe distance, while Gold remained unusually still beside them, her attention fixed on the facility's main entrance. "Movement at the southeast corner," James whispered into his radio, watching through high-powered binoculars. Workers were unloading more of the specialized crates, each one handled with extraordinary care. The operation had all the hallmarks of their previous discoveries, but something felt different about this facility. Dr. Carter's voice crackled through their secure communication channel. He had been analyzing data from their previous raids while coordinating with the veterinary team. "The blood work from the recently rescued puppies shows something new," he reported. "The enhancement compounds are more refined, more targeted. They're not just experimenting anymore, they're perfecting their process." Sarah watched as Gold's ears twitched, picking up sounds too faint for human ears. The dog's training had progressed remarkably, but it was her natural abilities, enhanced by the organization's programs, that made her truly exceptional. She could sense things others couldn't, understand situations with an almost supernatural clarity. Through their surveillance, they observed a pattern of activity that suggested this facility was different from the others. The security was more sophisticated, the personnel more professional, and the equipment being installed was cutting edge. "Look at this," James said, showing Sarah some photographs from their long-range camera. "They're installing specialized sound-dampening panels and electromagnetic shielding. Whatever they're doing in there, they want to make sure it's completely contained." Gold suddenly tensed, her attention shifting to a new arrival, a convoy of unmarked vehicles approaching the facility. The dogs in the transport crates became audibly agitated as the vehicles passed, their distress evident even from a distance. "They're not just bringing in new animals," Sarah realized, studying the scene through her binoculars. "They're bringing in equipment too, high-tech stuff like what we found in their research files." Their surveillance revealed that the facility was being prepared for something they called Phase 2 of Project Echo. Documents they'd recovered suggested this phase involved not just enhancing individual animals, but creating what they termed synchronized awareness networks. It's like they're trying to build some kind of collective intelligence, Dr. Carter explained during their next briefing. The compounds they're using don't just enhance individual abilities, they create connections between the animals, allowing them to share information and respond as a coordinated unit. Gold's behavior had become increasingly strategic. She would position herself where she could observe both the facility and their team, seemingly processing and analyzing everything she saw. Her actions weren't just instinctive anymore, they showed clear signs of tactical thinking. The team discovered that the facility's security systems were designed specifically to contain and control enhanced animals. The electromagnetic shielding, the sound dampening, the specialized ventilation, it was all meant to prevent the kind of escape Gold had managed. They learned from their mistakes, James observed. They're not going to risk losing control of their subjects again. Sarah's computer pinged with another anonymous message. The networks are already forming. You can't contain what you don't understand. Watch for the signs. They're already communicating. As if to confirm the message, Gold began exhibiting new behaviors. She would regularly gather the other rescued dogs at the clinic, engaging in what appeared to be organized play, but showed signs of something more complex. Coordinated movements, shared responses to stimuli, simultaneous reactions to potential threats. Dr. Carter had been documenting these interactions. It's remarkable, he reported. They're not just playing or socializing. They're practicing, learning to work together in ways that go beyond normal pack behavior. Gold isn't just leading them, she's teaching them. The implications were both fascinating and concerning. The organization hadn't just created enhanced animals, they had inadvertently sparked the development of a new kind of intelligence, one that could adapt and evolve beyond their control. The veterinary clinic had transformed into a hub of activity as Dr. Carter and his team continued their work with the rescued animals. Gold's influence on the other dogs had become increasingly evident, and the patterns of behavior they were observing defied conventional explanation. "Watch this, Dr. Carter said, gesturing to the clinic's play area where Gold was working with a group of recently rescued puppies. The dogs moved with uncanny coordination, responding to subtle cues that even trained observers struggled to detect. They're developing what we call emergent behaviors, capabilities that go beyond their individual training. Sarah and James had set up a temporary command center in one of the clinic's offices, walls covered with maps, photographs, and documents that traced the evolution of Project Echo. The latest intelligence suggested that the new facility was preparing for a major operation. The shipping manifests show they're bringing in specialized equipment from research facilities across the country, James reported, spreading out the latest documents. But here's what's interesting. They're also installing what appears to be communication monitoring systems. They're not just studying the animals anymore, they're studying how they interact with each other. Gold approached Sarah's desk, carrying a folder she'd retrieved from a stack of recent deliveries. Inside, they found something unexpected, technical specifications for what appeared to be advanced neurological monitoring equipment. "This is cutting-edge technology," Dr. Carter explained, examining the documents. "It's designed to track and analyze neural patterns across multiple subjects simultaneously. They're not just enhancing these animals, they're trying to understand how they're connecting with each other." The clinic's security cameras caught something unusual. The rescued dogs were exhibiting synchronized behavior even when physically separated. They would respond to potential threats at the same moment, despite being in different rooms and having no direct line of sight to each other. "It's like they've developed their own communication network," Sarah observed, watching the footage. "Gold isn't just leading them, she's facilitating some kind of collective awareness." Their investigation had revealed that Project Echo's original goal wasn't just to enhance individual animals, it was to develop what they called networked consciousness. The organization had theorized that properly enhanced animals could form psychological bonds that transcended normal limitations. "Look at these training protocols," James said, pulling up files from the sanctuary. They weren't just conditioning the animals to work together, they were trying to create synchronized emotional states. But something unexpected happened. The animals began developing abilities that went beyond the program's parameters. Gold's behavior had become increasingly sophisticated. She would position other dogs strategically around the clinic, creating what appeared to be a coordinated surveillance system. When delivery personnel or new visitors arrived, the dogs would communicate through subtle signals, maintaining constant awareness of potential threats. Dr. Carter had been documenting these developments meticulously. The remarkable thing isn't just their ability to communicate, he explained. It's their ability to adapt and improve their methods. They're not just following patterns we've observed before, they're creating new ones. Sarah's computer received another anonymous message, this one containing security footage from inside the new facility. The images showed researchers setting up elaborate testing areas, each designed to measure and monitor different aspects of animal behavior and communication. They're preparing for something big, James noted, studying the footage. These setups, they're not just for training or research. They're trying to achieve something specific. Gold suddenly became alert, her attention focused on the clinic's main entrance. Moments later, a group of people in business attire entered, claiming to be from an animal welfare organization conducting a routine inspection. But Gold's reaction suggested something else. These weren't ordinary inspectors. The visitors' credentials appeared genuine, but their interest in the recovered animals seemed overly focused on those showing signs of enhancement. They asked detailed questions about behavioral patterns and social interactions, paying particular attention to Gold and her apparent leadership role. After they left, Sarah and James discovered that similar inspections had been conducted at other facilities where rescued animals were being kept. It was a pattern. The organization was tracking their test subjects, gathering data on how they were developing outside of controlled conditions. They didn't anticipate this, Sarah realized, watching Gold coordinate a play session that looked more like a training exercise. They created these enhanced animals, but they never expected them to develop their own agency, their own ways of organizing and communicating. The late afternoon sun filtered through the clinic's windows as Sarah reviewed the latest surveillance reports. The organization's interest in their rescued animals had become increasingly evident, with more frequent attempts to monitor and document their behavior. Gold had taken to conducting regular patrols of the clinic's perimeter, coordinating with other dogs in what appeared to be a sophisticated security routine. Their pattern recognition abilities are off the charts, Dr. Carter explained, showing Sarah and James his latest findings. They're not just remembering faces or routines, they're identifying and responding to complex behavioral patterns we can barely detect. The doctor's research had revealed something extraordinary about Gold's influence on the other dogs. Under her guidance, they weren't just recovering from their ordeals, they were developing new capabilities, learning to work together in ways that suggested a deeper level of connection. "Look at this," James said, pulling up security footage from the previous night. The video showed several dogs responding simultaneously to a potential threat, a suspicious vehicle that had parked briefly outside the clinic. Their coordinated response had occurred without any visible communication between them. Sarah's phone buzzed with another anonymous message. "The network is growing stronger. What started with Gold is spreading." They're learning, adapting, becoming something more than anyone anticipated. Dr. Carter had been comparing notes with colleagues at other veterinary facilities where rescued animals were being kept. "We're seeing similar patterns emerging everywhere," he reported. The enhanced dogs are forming social structures that don't follow normal pack dynamics. They're organizing themselves based on abilities rather than dominance. Gold approached Sarah's desk, carrying a newspaper in her mouth. The front page featured a story about a new research facility being built on the outskirts of town, the same area where they'd observed suspicious activity earlier. "They're not hiding anymore," James observed. "They're operating in plain sight, using legitimate research as cover for their real operations." The team had discovered that the organization was now presenting itself as a pioneer in animal behavior research, using their public facilities to mask their more questionable activities. The new facility was being promoted as a center for studying animal intelligence and social behavior. Through their surveillance, they'd observed a steady stream of equipment being delivered to the new facility, specialized monitoring systems, advanced training apparatus, and what appeared to be medical research equipment. "They're scaling up," Sarah noted, reviewing the delivery manifests. "But why now? What are they preparing for?" Gold's behavior provided a clue. She had begun spending more time with the younger dogs, particularly those showing signs of enhanced abilities. Her interactions with them weren't just protective or nurturing. She appeared to be teaching them, guiding their development in specific ways. Dr. Carter's latest tests had revealed something remarkable about these training sessions. The younger dogs aren't just copying Gold's behavior, he explained. They're developing their own unique abilities while maintaining the connection to the group. It's like they're building a network where each member contributes something different. The implications were staggering. The organization hadn't just created enhanced animals, they had inadvertently sparked the development of a new kind of social structure, one that combined individual growth with collective awareness. Sarah watched as Gold organized another training session in the clinic's play area. The dog's methods were fascinating. She would demonstrate a behavior, then step back and allow each puppy to adapt it to their own abilities. Some showed enhanced empathy, others displayed remarkable problem-solving skills, but all remained connected to the group. She's not just teaching them skills, James realized. She's teaching them how to be part of something larger while maintaining their independence. The organization's recent activities suggested they were aware of these developments. Their new facility wasn't just equipped for training and research. It was designed to study and possibly control these emerging networks of enhanced animals. As evening approached, Gold gathered the other dogs for what had become a regular ritual. They would gather in a loose circle, each animal maintaining awareness of the others while remaining alert to their surroundings. It was a demonstration of what Dr. Carter had started calling collective consciousness, a state where individual awareness combined with group coordination. The veterinary clinic buzzed with nervous energy as Sarah and James reviewed their latest findings with Dr. Carter. The rescued animals had begun displaying increasingly coordinated behaviors, with Gold at the center of what appeared to be an evolving network of enhanced abilities. Their development is accelerating, Dr. Carter explained, showing them his latest observations. It's not just about individual enhancement anymore. They're creating something entirely new, a kind of collective intelligence that maintains individual autonomy while fostering group cooperation. Gold sat attentively nearby, her presence both calming and alerting. Over the past weeks, she had transformed the clinic into what Sarah had begun calling a training academy, where rescued animals learned not just to recover from their ordeals, but to develop and control their enhanced abilities. "Watch this," James said, pulling up footage from their security cameras. The video showed a remarkable sequence of events from the previous night. When a suspicious vehicle had approached the clinic, the dogs had responded with what could only be described as tactical precision, some maintaining watch while others moved to protect vulnerable areas, all without any visible communication. Sarah's computer pinged with another anonymous message. "They're ready, the network is stable." What happens next will change everything we thought we knew about animal intelligence. Dr. Carter had been analyzing blood samples from the rescued animals, comparing them with Gold's original test results. "The enhancement compounds are still present in their systems," he reported, "but they're not just maintaining the changes anymore, they're evolving. The animals are developing new neural pathways, creating connections we've never seen before." Through their surveillance of the new facility, they had observed the organization bringing in sophisticated monitoring equipment, technology designed to track and analyze complex patterns of behavior and communication. But what they were seeing at the clinic suggested the enhanced animals had already moved beyond what these systems could measure. "They're not just responding to training anymore," Sarah observed, watching Gold work with a group of younger dogs. "They're creating their own methods, their own ways of learning and teaching. It's like they've developed a kind of collective wisdom." James had been tracking patterns in the organization's recent activities. "They're shifting their focus," he reported. "The new facility isn't just about creating enhanced animals, it's about studying and trying to control these emerging networks. They're realizing that what they started has grown beyond their original intentions." Gold's approach to training the other dogs had become increasingly sophisticated. She would create scenarios that tested not just their enhanced abilities, but their capacity to work together, to combine their strengths in new and unexpected ways. Each dog brought unique capabilities to the group, but it was their ability to coordinate and support each other that made them truly remarkable. Dr. Carter's latest research had revealed something extraordinary about these interactions. The neural patterns we're seeing suggest they're not just communicating. They're sharing experiences, learning from each other's successes and failures. It's a level of social learning that goes beyond anything we've documented before. As they discussed these findings, Gold suddenly became alert, her attention focused on the clinic's entrance. Moments later, a group of people arrived, claiming to be from a research foundation interested in animal behavior studies. Their credentials appeared legitimate, but their questions revealed a deeper agenda. They were particularly interested in how the rescued animals organized themselves and responded to challenges. Sarah noticed subtle signals passing between Gold and the other dogs during the visit. They maintained what appeared to be casual positions around the clinic, but she recognized it as a carefully coordinated defensive formation. The dogs weren't just protecting themselves, they were gathering information, assessing potential threats and sharing their observations with each other. "They're not just survivors anymore," James said quietly after the visitors had left. "They're becoming something more, something that combines the best of their enhanced abilities with a deep understanding of how to work together." The team had discovered that the organization's new facility was equipped with containment systems designed to isolate and control enhanced animals. But watching Gold coordinate with her growing network of trained companions, Sarah realized they had fundamentally misunderstood what they were dealing with. These animals weren't just subjects to be controlled, they were conscious, intelligent beings who had learned to combine individual freedom with collective purpose. Morning light streamed through the clinic's windows as Sarah, James, and Dr. Carter prepared for what they knew would be a decisive day. The organization's activities at the new facility had reached a fever pitch, with equipment and personnel arriving around the clock. But it was Gold's behavior that truly signaled the importance of what was about to unfold. The remarkable dog had gathered all the recovered animals in the clinic's main area, engaging them in what appeared to be final preparations. Her methods had evolved far beyond simple training. She was now coordinating complex responses to various scenarios, teaching the others to adapt and improvise while maintaining their connection to the group. "It's extraordinary, Doctor," Carter remarked, documenting the interactions. "They've developed a complete system of non-verbal communication. Each dog knows exactly what role to play, what abilities to contribute to the group. Gold hasn't just taught them skills, she's helped them understand how to use their enhanced abilities as part of a larger whole." Sarah watched as Gold moved among the other dogs, her presence both commanding and nurturing. The organization had intended to create enhanced animals they could control, but instead, they had sparked the development of something far more remarkable, a network of intelligent, empathetic beings capable of making their own choices while working together for a common purpose. "Look at this," James called from his computer. He had been analyzing data from their surveillance of the new facility. "They're bringing in specialized containment units, the kind designed to isolate and control enhanced animals. They're preparing for something big." Gold approached Sarah's desk, carrying a folder in her mouth. Inside were documents that had been delivered to the clinic that morning. Official papers announcing the opening of what was being called the Advanced Animal Behavior Research Center. The organization was going public with their operation, using legitimate research as cover for their true intentions. "Doctor, Carter's latest tests had revealed something remarkable about the rescued animals' development. The enhancement compounds in their systems have stabilized," he explained, showing them the results. "But more importantly, they're now producing their own neural adaptations. They're not just maintaining the changes anymore, they're evolving on their own." Through their surveillance, they had observed the organization's new facility being equipped with sophisticated monitoring systems. But watching Gold coordinate with her network of companions, it was clear that these systems would be inadequate. The enhanced animals had developed abilities that went beyond what conventional technology could measure or control. They don't understand what they're dealing with, Sarah realized. They think they can contain and control these abilities, but they're missing the point entirely. It's not about control, it's about cooperation and choice. James had been tracking patterns in the organization's recent activities when he noticed something significant. "They're not just studying the animals anymore," he reported. "They're trying to understand how to replicate what Gold has created, this network of enhanced abilities and collective awareness." Gold's training sessions had taken on new urgency. She worked with each dog individually, helping them refine their unique abilities, while strengthening their connection to the group. Some showed remarkable empathy. Others displayed problem-solving skills that defied explanation, but all maintained their individual identity while contributing to the collective. Dr. Carter had been documenting these interactions with growing amazement. "What we're seeing here isn't just enhanced animal behavior," he explained. "It's the emergence of a new kind of intelligence, one that combines individual consciousness with group awareness in ways we've never seen before." As evening approached, Gold gathered the other dogs for what seemed like a final briefing. Their coordinated movements and shared focus suggested they were preparing for something important. Sarah noticed that each dog had taken up strategic positions around the clinic, maintaining what appeared to be a sophisticated surveillance pattern. "They know something's coming," James observed, watching the animals' behavior. "They're not just reacting anymore. They're anticipating, planning, preparing." The organization's new facility was now fully operational, its purpose disguised behind a facade of legitimate research. But through their investigation, Sarah and her team had uncovered its true intention: to study and control the very abilities that Gold and her companions had developed freely. The day of the Advanced Animal Behavior Research Center's grand opening arrived with an air of anticipation. News crews gathered outside the facility, drawn by promises of groundbreaking discoveries in animal intelligence and behavior. But within the veterinary clinic, Sarah, James, and Dr. Carter knew this was more than just a scientific announcement. It was the culmination of everything they'd been working towards. Gold stood at attention, her presence commanding yet serene. The network she had built among the rescued animals had evolved into something remarkable, a harmonious blend of individual abilities and collective awareness that defied conventional understanding. "It's time," Sarah said, reviewing their final preparations. The evidence they'd gathered painted a clear picture of the organization's true intentions. Not just to study enhanced animals, but to control and exploit their abilities for commercial gain. Dr. Carter's latest research had revealed something extraordinary. "The network Gold has created," he explained, showing them his findings, "it's not just about communication or coordination. It's a new form of social structure, one that enhances individual abilities while fostering collective growth." Through their surveillance, they watched as the organization's leadership arrived at the new facility. Reporters and cameras followed their every move as they prepared to unveil their supposed breakthroughs in animal behavior research. But Gold had other plans. With remarkable precision, she coordinated a response that would expose the truth without causing harm or chaos. The enhanced animals, working in perfect synchronization, began demonstrating their abilities in ways that couldn't be explained by the organization's official narrative. James, monitoring the situation through their surveillance network, reported the unfolding events. "They're showing what they can really do," he said, watching as the animals demonstrated levels of intelligence and cooperation that went far beyond what the organization claimed to have achieved. The media's attention shifted as they witnessed demonstrations of extraordinary abilities, not performed under controlled conditions or through forced compliance, but freely chosen and collectively coordinated. Gold led her companions in displays of problem-solving, emotional intelligence, and cooperative behavior that left observers stunned. Dr. Carter's documentation proved crucial, providing scientific validation of what they were witnessing. "These aren't just trained behaviors," he explained to the gathered press. "This is genuine intelligence, freely developed and expressed through cooperation rather than control." The organization's carefully constructed narrative began to unravel. Their attempts to present themselves as pioneers in animal behavior research were overshadowed by the reality of what Gold and her network had actually achieved, a natural evolution of abilities that no amount of controlled experimentation could replicate. Sarah watched as Gold moved among the other dogs, her leadership evident not through dominance, but through guidance and support. The network they had created wasn't just about enhanced abilities. It was about building connections, fostering growth, and protecting each other. The day ended not with the organization's planned triumph, but with a powerful demonstration of what was possible when intelligence and empathy were allowed to develop naturally. The enhanced animals had shown that true advancement came not through control and exploitation, but through understanding and cooperation. In the aftermath, Gold's legacy took on new significance. The veterinary clinic, under Dr. Carter's guidance, became a legitimate center for studying and supporting animal intelligence. The network Gold had built continued to grow, not as a controlled experiment, but as a thriving community of extraordinary beings. Sarah and James watched as Gold played with her original puppies, now healthy and strong, each showing signs of their own unique abilities. The dog who had once stopped their patrol car on a rural road hadn't just saved her family. She had helped unveil a new understanding of what animals could achieve when given the freedom to grow and develop on their own terms. The organization's facilities were transformed into genuine sanctuaries, where animals could develop their abilities naturally, without exploitation or control. Gold's network became a model for understanding animal intelligence, not as something to be controlled, but as something to be nurtured and respected. As the sun set on this new chapter, Gold gathered her extended family of enhanced animals, their collective presence a testament to what could be achieved through cooperation rather than control. The network they had built would continue to grow and evolve, guided not by human intervention, but by their own remarkable intelligence and empathy. Dear viewers, we hope Gold's extraordinary journey has touched your hearts. To continue experiencing more captivating stories like this one, we've prepared a special playlist filled with equally moving tales. You'll find it in the link to the left. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Every day, we bring you unique stories that explore the remarkable bonds between humans and animals. Join us in the comments section. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Gold's inspiring tale of courage, intelligence, and the power of connection.